Ask me the question, start the tape running, let's just get the program on the way. How I met Barry Seals. He reached over, shook my hand, and said, my name's Barry Seals. And how do you do it? We introduced ourselves and we chatted a while. And I told Barry about that. He said, no, I need to land up in Arkansas, but it would cost you $50,000. $50,000, look, man, you get it done for $10,000. Land on that Interstate 10, that's just for nothing. He said, no, man. He said, I cannot get caught in Mena, Arkansas. Absolutely, 100% guaranteed I can. And it's paid off all the way to the top. I could say that Barry flew in 1981 and 82 about 30 loads for me. All right, I was getting on a plane there in Honduras going to New Orleans. My family got there first, and I came with clothes that come from a cleaner's, and I got there late, and the plane was taking off and was going across the tarmac, and I ran out with those clothes on the tarmac. Then I saw my wife in the cockpit, and she told the pilot, and he put on the brakes, and I ran out, and he let the stairway out automatically halfway, and then he pulled it back in, started off again, and he laughed and let it on out, and I came on board with a big stack of clothes, and all the passengers, 160 of them, just clapped me coming on late like that. So I went on down the aisle to find my seat, and there was my daughter Miriam. She was 8 years old at the time, and she was sitting in the middle, and beside her was a man there about maybe 45 years old, and he was sitting by the window, and I looked at him, and I thought, oh boy, he had clear blue eyes, and he's a handsome man. And I thought, he should have CIA stamped across his chest. He's down here advising those people that's fighting that little war against Sandinista communist government. And I sit down in the seat in the aisle, and the plane took off. And as soon as it left the runway, the wheels came up with a thud. And we got up, I guess, about 5,000 feet. And then there was another little clump. And Gabe said, what was that, Dad? And I said, oh, the pilot just engaged his autopilot, and it wasn't at the same altitude. That's when he turned it off. And when I thought the CIA man reached across, and he says, you fly one of these things too? Yes, sir, I got a few hours. And he reached over and shook my hand. He said, my name's Barry Seals. And how do you do? And we introduced ourselves, and we chatted a while. And I think that I traded seats with my daughter. And I thought, well, he didn't put me there. It wasn't, nobody put him beside me because I didn't know where I was going to sit. There wasn't unassigned seating, so it just happened to be, and I felt a little better. And he told me that he had just gotten out of prison that morning from doing a year in Honduras. He got caught with 100 kilos of cocaine. So I thought, boy, it's interesting. And he told me that he used to work with Trans World Airlines, that he had been a captain of 747 pilot. Wow, I thought, man, he done quite a bit. And so I was still a little reluctant, and I thought, boy, this man might be the fella here that I'm looking for to work for me. I already had one pilot working, or two pilots, and looking for another line to fly cocaine out of Colombia. So when we landed at New Orleans, we all got off the plane and got our bags, and when we came outside, there was his wife. She was a pretty woman, and she just fell into his arms, and three little children just jumped up and down crying and hugging Daddy. And I thought, oh boy, he is telling the truth. He just got out of jail this morning. How wonderful. So after all the introductions was over, I gave him my address and told him to come out to see me in Santa Barbara, California. So he did, and a couple of weeks later he was out there. And so I had a Anyway, so I went out to the airport with him after we had had dinner and all. And we took it up for a flight. We got up, I don't know, 5,000 or 10,000 feet, and he was flying. And he said, "You want me to do a few maneuvers in this?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Just show me what you got." Well, I shouldn't have told him that. He pushed the nose down and picked up about 400 miles an hour and did a loop or two and rolled it up and did an emerald and going the other way and did a tight spiral, and then he put it into what we call like a falling leaf. The only place I'd ever seen that was at an air show with Bob Hoover, the world champion, that did it. Boy, did that thing. He just put it on the runway and it stopped right there right where he wanted it to. And I thought, man, that fellow is an ace. So I told him what I had and told him I would give him $2,000 a kilo to fly cocaine, and the minimum each load would be 300 kilos. It might be more, but that would give him $600,000 for each load. And, he said he was ready to go. And I said, "Well, we need to tank this plane. I just bought it from a television station there in Los Angeles." And he says, "All right." Says, "I know just a place in Mena, Arkansas, where I got a fellow there that will put tanks in this plane, and he won't say anything about it." So I gave him $10,000, and he flew away with my airplane. And next time I saw him, I flew there to Baton Rouge to his house and met his wife and stayed there for a day or two of the weekend. Lovely person, and the plane was packed professionally. I mean, it looked good. And I just enjoyed his company. He's a lovely person. Sat around the table with his family, and they said the blessing, and little children hold hands. It was just nice. And so Barry went to work flying for me. He could fly as fast as I'd pay him. And they wanted him to come every day. So that was how I met Barry Seals.
We were working with Barry Seal. He was another group.
Barry had been a TWA pilot and a Vietnam War pilot before that.
Barry was, out of everybody, the best pilot that I ever saw in my life.
And he drifted into the Colombian cartel market as a delivery specialist and got himself involved in guns, money, and drugs through flights in and out of Managua, Nicaragua, where he enjoyed the protection of the president of Nicaragua.
Barry Seal had the most incredible operation I'd ever seen.
I'm not a drug smuggler. I say prove it.
Barry was fearless. 1,000, 1,500 kilos of coke was like a joke to him, and it was not a problem. Barry worked out of Louisiana. He'd work on the drop of a hat. He didn't care. He'd get in his plane and he'd go down there and he'd throw 1,000 kilos on the plane and he'd come back to Louisiana. He landed at a regular airport. He had a warehouse. They had ramps in the back that would open up and you could drive vehicles into them. You could put tons on these vehicles. Barry got busted on a load and didn't tell anybody.
He cut himself a deal as a federal confidential informant.
They would let him go, and they would install cameras on the inside of his plane, and they wanted him to film an actual loading, bring the coke back here and the film back here. And he agreed to do this.
The Army brought in the truckloads, the duffel bags full of cocaine, and they were loaded on board the aircraft by the Cuban and Sandinista soldiers.
And he had some great shots.
Barry Seal was able to snap pictures during the mission of a leading international cocaine trafficker, Sandinista government officials, soldiers loading cocaine onto the plane.
Top Nicaraguan government officials are deeply involved in drug trafficking.
And on national TV, President Reagan held up this picture and said, "Here's Pablo Escobar loading a plane with cocaine."
This picture, secretly taken at a military airfield outside Managua, shows Federico Vaughn, a top aide to one of the 9 commandantes who rule Nicaragua, loading an aircraft with illegal narcotics bound for the United States.
The pictures were produced by Barry Seal.
He has thus become the key witness in South Florida's most important drug case.
Seal also told the President's Commission on Organized Crime how easy it is to smuggle cocaine.
My initial experience was with marijuana, but I soon moved into cocaine because of its ease in handling and its profit structure.
That's when the heat started to come to Escobar and to Ochoa. Not from the Colombians. The Colombians, they didn't give a goddamn. But this government who was giving Colombia money started to put heat on them down there.
Seal is already cooperating with drug agents in Miami, where he is a key witness in one of the most significant investigations in South Florida history. Meantime, there are still unanswered questions in the Baton Rouge investigation.
There was a judge out in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who just kind of didn't like the fact that a federal judge in Miami was going to be the final arbiter of Mr. Seal's fate.
A federal grand jury in Baton Rouge has been investigating Seal's activities for 15 months. Today's indictment charged Seal with conspiracy to possess and distribute 462 pounds of cocaine with a street value estimated at $168 million. In return for Seal's cooperation, the Justice Department will allow him to plead guilty to the charges in today's indictment and receive what amounts to a slap on the wrist.
I've reached exactly the type of settlement that I wanted to reach. Whether they're happy or not, you'll have to ask them.
And despite numerous pleas, that judge in Louisiana refused to drop a 6-month house arrest order, which was a meaningless, totally meaningless order in the scheme of things. It was speculated that this judge knew, or should have known, that by publicly ordering where this man had to show up and at what time he had to show up and leave, he was issuing a death warrant for him, and certainly that's what happened.
The exciting thing in life to me is to get into a life-threatening situation. Now that's excitement.
I could say that berries flew in 1981 and 82, about 30 loads for me. And I had a place to land in southern Louisiana that I was paying $10,000. It was a good place. It was paid off well. And I told Barry about that, and he said, no, I need to land in Arkansas, but it'll cost you $50,000 a load. $50,000 a load, man. You can get it done for $10,000. I land on that Interstate 10, I'd definitely not it. He said, no, man. He said, I cannot get coffee in Mena, Arkansas. Absolutely. 100% guaranteed I can. That it's paid off all the way to the top. But I didn't know how far to the top it actually was paid off until after all this stuff. Not the CIA and Clinton. All the rest of them, George Bush and everybody else was seemed to be involved. So that's what he did. He landed in Arkansas as he was working for me until August of 1982. And I would say he did at least 30 months. I know that his brother, Bill Clinton's brother Roger, was arrested for cocaine charges. Pardoned him, and I don't know who Barry was paying off, but he said it was to the top. Bill Clinton was to the top as far as the state was going.
Dan Lassiter, who is best friend of Bill Clinton, who went to jail with Roger Clinton for cocaine. And by the way, let me explain something. He didn't sell cocaine. No, they were giving it away anyway. Huge piles of cocaine in his office, ashtray upon ashtray full at the parties, and they would give it to young girls. That's sick. I mean, they were giving a highly addictive drug to young girls.
One particular one comes to mind is a 14-year-old cheerleader out of North Little Rock. She was a virgin, and ultimately he ended up sending her to a physician of his
The physician put her on birth control pills. He used cocaine in order to ultimately she lost her virginity, and she got addicted to cocaine. And the last I heard of her, when we had her subpoenaed back to the federal grand jury, she was a hooker in Lake Tahoe.
Dan Laster contracted to launder the money. Now, in addition to his contracting to launder the money and the system that he and Bill Clinton had set up to do it, probably what he did is he took advantage of some of the cocaine. That's why he could give it away. Shoot, you have $100 million a month in cocaine. They wouldn't care if you took a bucket full a day.
After Laster was indicted, I started to receive quite a bit of harassment from my own department, the Arkansas State Police. And I knew the reason behind it because the affiliation with the state police and the governor's office with Dan Laster and his business associates.
Well, to start off with, I didn't feel betrayed by Barry. Somehow or another, the way he brought it to me, and the way he sat there and cried, and how he was facing several life sentences unless he told, and how much pressure they had put on him, I understood it. And then he said, you know, that you can have another passport and live anywhere you want to. All you have to do is get the same thing I did. So anyway, I just thought, well, you're the first fellow that's protected me out of all the other ones. But there was 11 of them that some of them were friends, some of them just laughed everything, just told everything and put me away. And the best friends for life, just all of them put me away. So whenever I fled and went to, I told Barry, I had dinner with him, and I said, Barry, they're going to kill you. And like I said, he stuck his head in the sand and just wouldn't believe it. No, this and other. I just left. We was at the Festival restaurant in Coral Gables. That was on my birthday. I guess it must have been 1986, January the 26th. I fled to Brazil. And then I kept calling my friend Mario in Colombia about the $3 million that Ochoa owed. And then he said that Ochoa was going to had paid him $600,000, and he would get the rest. So then I called back in 2 weeks, and he told me Barry had been killed there in the parking lot in Louisiana.
He used to smuggle drugs. Then he got caught, and he became one of the government's most valuable informants in the war against cocaine. But last night in Louisiana, Barry Seal's enemies caught up with him and killed him. Tonight, 3 men are in custody. NBC's Brian Ross reports that Seal was about to testify for the government once again.
Authorities believe last night's machine gun killing of top drug informant Barry Seal was ordered by drug bosses in Medellin, Colombia, who sent 5 men to Baton Rouge to kill Seal. Seal's son, Barry Jr., one of 5 children, was restrained by police, who said the gunman had waited in ambush for Seal at a Salvation Army shelter, where Seal had been sentenced by a federal judge on a drug charge to do community service. Seal was a tough guy TWA pilot who got caught smuggling cocaine and became one of the most important and daring undercover operatives, infiltrating the top Colombian drug operations. In a recent interview, Seal said he knew he was risking his life.
The old saying, if you can't stand the heat, don't work in the kitchen. I can take the pressure.
It was Seal who posed as a smuggler and flew into Nicaragua and took these pictures showing Colombian drug dealers and Sandinista officials loading cocaine on his plane. Seal busted up the Colombian connection in the Caribbean country of Turks and Caicos, setting up a payoff meeting on videotape that led to the arrest and conviction of the country's prime minister. And Seal was scheduled to be the key witness against this man, Jorge Ochoa, the top Colombian drug boss, now in jail in Spain, about to be extradited to the United States. Authorities say the Ochoa drug organization was responsible for the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Bogota last year, the assassination of Colombia's Attorney General, and now the murder in Louisiana of the man who was perhaps the most important undercover drug informant ever. Brian Ross, NBC News.
And it was like somebody hit me in the chest with a hammer. I mean, it was like, oh, they killed him, even though I knew he was, and I knew I just knew he was going to get killed. I knew he was. And anyway, it was just like just like a dear friend had been murdered, had just been shot down in cold blood. They shot 50 times. He said he put his hands over his ears to bring out the sound. He fell over his steering wheel of his car. A friend of mine that was gone. Yeah, I was sad. I cried. The tears just fell down on me. I told Maria and Miriam, and they cried too.
Barry pushed the phone across the desk to me and said, "You want to know what's going on? Here, dial this number. Tell him you're me," Unglesby related. When I did what he requested, he continued a female voice answered the phone saying, "Vice President Bush's office, may I help you?" I said, "This is Barry Seal." She asked me to wait while she transferred the call, which was immediately picked up by a man who identified himself as Admiral somebody or other, who said to me, "Barry, where you been?" That's when I told him that I wasn't Barry Seal, I was his lawyer, said Unglesby. Immediately he slammed down the phone. Then we discovered why Seal had been so unconcerned about being killed by the Medellin Cartel. I asked Barry why he wasn't worried about the Colombians killing him, stated close associate mob pilot Rene Martin. He said he told the Colombians he was going to pull a fast one and testify for Ochoa against the U.S. government. Unquote. 2 weeks before he died, Barry Seal had hired a private investigator in Miami, Steve Dinerstein, to run FAA title searches on 15 different airplanes he had used in his smuggling enterprise. Seal was getting ready to talk about who owned his smuggling fleet 15 years ago. Barry Seal was assassinated because he was getting ready to talk. He had even contacted a Paramount Studios production vice president about making a movie. While the killers approached Barry Seal's Cadillac in the Baton Rouge twilight, Seal had been on his car phone with a CIA aircraft procurement executive in Arizona, Bill Lambeth, who will himself be murdered in Phoenix 7 years later. Suddenly cut off, and fearing the worst, Lambeth frantically dialed Barry's home number, where his wife Debbie answered. "I think something's wrong with Barry," Lambeth said ominously. Debbie, unable to reach her husband, bundled her 3 small children into the car and frantically headed for the Salvation Army halfway house where he'd been sentenced to sleep for 6 months. On the way, she stopped at a payphone to make another attempt to reach her husband and learned he was now unreachable, unquote. "He's not going to the hospital," she remembers being told. "He's dead. Don't come here, Debbie. Don't." As she returned to her car, she could see through her tears her 3 small children's heads barely peeking over the car seats. And though Barry Seal is anything but blameless, his 3 small children were. They symbolize the millions of lives ruined by a phony drug war whose only purpose is to line still more the pockets of a crew of elite deviants who took over our country. "All I could think of was my poor little babies, my poor babies," Debbie Seal told us, choking back tears. "I didn't know how I was going to tell them that their daddy was dead." At the Baton Rouge funeral home where mourners gathered for Barry Seal's wake, the newly widowed Debbie Seal's oldest childhood friend noticed with curiosity an entire line of men in sleek dark suits hovering near the back of the room. "Who are they?" she asked Debbie. "They're with the government," Debbie replied. "They've come to make sure that he's dead," unquote. This has been the story of Barry Seal, the biggest drug smuggler in American history who died in a hail of bullets with George Bush's private phone number in his wallet.
Barry the man was a gentleman, absolutely a Southern gentleman. I never heard him be angry, never saw him be angry, never saw him raise his voice. He didn't drink whiskey, he didn't smoke a cigarette, he didn't run around on his wife. He was a family man, and just as always polite to everybody. You just couldn't imagine a nicer person in this whole world. Barry, folks looking back on my life, I would say I liked him about as good as anybody I ever met. He was a wonderful, fine fellow. And that was the man
Shut up and sit down.
But some prisoners are unlikely ever to see the outside again. Roger is serving out his days in Casuarina for importing $250 million worth of cocaine.
I received a life sentence for it, and I have to do 18 years before I'm eligible to apply for parole. I captained a boat with a small ship with a ton of cocaine, and I picked out the most remote spot I could find in Australia, and I sank the boat offshore, and I came out in the ship and came ashore in rubber boats, and I was arrested. And I received a life sentence for it. I've been in a Mexican prison where I've been tortured for 3 weeks and had chilies stuffed up my rectum till it eat the lining off of my colon. I've been in Spain where I escaped from a prison there. I jumped out the window of the third floor, 33 feet on top of a car, and got away handcuffed. And I escaped from a maximum security prison in Germany in 1990 and escaped from that country. And I cut a hole in the Metropolitan Detention Center 22 floors above the streets of Los Angeles and was captured there too.
Young men, if you're ever thinking about getting into this business, I want you to think real hard. There's a lot of money to be made, but the price is a terrible price to pay. And this war on drugs is not a war on drugs. It's a war on people, the men, women, and children of this world. America, I understand, has over 2 million people locked up and another 5 or 6 million on parole. That's a crime. Come on now. End the war, you politicians. Get off your bum. Stop this madness. End the war. Send our folks home.
Unwittingly joined the U.S. government mafia, of which part the CIA is the kingpin, the Don.
So you're saying that the CIA is the kingpin of the head of the United States Mafia?
I am a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, and I work South Central Los Angeles, and I will tell you, Director Deutsch, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
That you have a private network run by George Bush and Ollie North, not the CIA. You won't find the records in the CIA. They're not there. They're in these private privatized intelligence agencies. Will you pursue that? Will you pursue Ollie North and George Bush and the massive documentation?
CIA Inspector General had to admit that the CIA was involved bringing in the majority of the cocaine, at least on the West Coast. It's much bigger than that. Mena, Arkansas, just so many others that were there and saw governors, saw vice presidents who would be there personally offloading aircraft with the cocaine. I mean, that's what, and then, I mean, if local kids saw it, they'd kill them. Remember Mena, Arkansas and all that? And then if the cops talked about that, they'd kill the cops. I mean, a lot of people have died over this information. I hope you understand this.
I'm getting ready to do something too. I'm running for president.
Up to their eyeballs in cocaine. Give me another cup of coffee. It is the best in the land.
Beautiful.
Give me another cup of coffee. I'm just a truck driving man. Yeehaw!
That's beautiful. And that's been recorded too, I might add.
Yeehaw and all.